Hey, what's going on? I'm Parrish Williamson, and I'm here with Tori Williams, and we're going to go over top mistakes that home buyers make.
So, what are some of the top mistakes that you personally see home buyers making?
The biggest first mistake, and I say first because they're not reaching out to get guidance.
Right.
And a lot of times, I don't know about for you, but for me, or maybe for you too, but a lot of times they're coming to us and they're just like, I'm ready to buy a home, and we'll ask the preliminary questions of like, what's your income, how much you have saved up,
Yes.
you know, have you been working consistently for 2 years, X, Y, and Z, and come to find out for whatever reason, they're actually not ready.
Yes.
We kind of have to like send them back into the world for 6 months to a year, you know, before they can come back. And so I think the biggest mistake is that they're not having these conversations with us about how to be prepared to purchase a home.
Yes.
They don't understand the process. So when they feel like they're ready, sadly, a lot of them are actually not.
Yeah, so true. I think kind of along those same lines, they're not reaching out for, the pre-approval process. So typically I'll have those conversations where I ask all the questions to see how they qualify. But if they skip that step, they really have no idea, what they actually qualify for, and then you can't do anything.
No.
Because you have no idea what they can actually afford.
True.
And so then you wind up wasting a lot of time.
Yeah.
They wind up wasting a lot of time. And a lot of it could have been avoided if we were just able to sit down in the beginning. And if they weren't ready at the time, usually we have steps to help them get ready within the next couple months.
Yeah. The best I can do is understand where their credit score is at and how much they have saved up.
Yes.
That's like the best I can do, to just be like, you might be ready, you might not.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'll think they're ready and then I send them to you and you're like, nah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's more complicated than people think.
Yes.
Buying a home, they've made it, unfortunately, it can be difficult. Even if you can technically afford a payment, you can afford a mortgage payment, technically you can afford what comes with being a homeowner. If the rules of the different mortgage programs say, sorry, you can't, then unfortunately there's nothing you can do. Unless you're buying in cash. If you have cash, that's different. But, the bank has a certain, list of requirements that you have to, unfortunately, meet. If you don't meet the requirements, doesn't matter how ready you think you are.
And then I think being ready, and it leads into being pre-approved.
Yes.
And part of that initial conversation is not understanding why they should be pre-approved. I know for me, it's like, hey, can we go look at houses? And I'm like, no.
Yeah,
right. And it's like, and I don't want to be like that. And sometimes I'll play like this trust game, and I'll show them like a house or two, and then try to have a serious conversation.
Right.
And look, I do this knowing the risk, but there's always that moment of like, oh, I just got burned.
Yeah.
And the problem is that I'm showing you a house. You don't have a pre-approval. Yeah. And part of that is because in between there, we haven't found out yet if you are even prepared or qualify to get a pre-approval.
Exactly. Yep.
So I think that's the best reason for why they should first have those conversations with us.
Yeah,
so
100%.
They understand the process.
And on the flip side, that's the pre-approval process, but then also making sure that they're speaking to you at all. Because sometimes, people will think that they don't need a real estate agent. They can look for houses on their own. They can go to open houses. But I think that there's so much high level of importance on a realtor and the position that you actually play and the role that you play. Because especially when a market is hot like it is now, people need all the guidance that they can get. And truthfully, there's going to be a lot of things that they don't have access to and don't understand that you have access to and that you do understand, which makes their chances of getting a home 100 times more possible.
So on your end, from doing in loans, what would you say are some things you see when you notice they're neglecting research before getting into the home buying process?
Okay, so on my end, I think that it's really a matter of taxes in the area. So property taxes, a lot of buyers will, not understand the difference in the property taxes and the level of, how expensive they can be in one area versus another. So for example, somebody who's looking to buy in Nassau County, but they're also open to Suffolk, and they're like, I want to be in either one of those areas, and I want the pre-approval to be around 600,000 for both of them, but not realizing that the property taxes in a part of Suffolk County could be totally different than it can be in Nassau County. So that's a big part. I think, just the general area. Sometimes people are coming from a place that's farther away, so maybe they're coming from the city, maybe they're coming out of state, and they're not really sure or familiar with the different areas, and they're like, oh, well, I want to still be able to work in the city, or I still want to be able to get here and there, especially for city employees. They usually, want to know if they're coming out to Long Island, how they can get back to the city pretty quickly.
That is true.
So sometimes they've done their research, but other times they don't even know like where the nearest highway is, or like the closest train station, or whatever the case may be. So those are a few top things I see. How about you?
Yeah, besides not knowing where the closest public transportation areas are, they asked me about schools. And it's a little bit of a legal issue because I cannot tell them what's a good school or bad school, because technically that's an opinionated question.
Yes.
And so it's against the law for me to, give those answers. But typically what I'll say is like, well, most families like Massapequa, right? And it's very, generic. And it's true, right?
Right.
Families move to Massapequa.
That's true.
Families move to other neighborhoods as well. So, at the end of the day, I do explain to them, you're just going to have to look up that information. I do provide like a website that they can go to. I do just let them know, like, they will have to look into, what schools they would prefer their kids to go to. Also, is it a nice neighborhood? Is it a bad neighborhood? Again, I can let them know, like, oh, it's a beautiful neighborhood, but I can't really say it's a nice, I cannot say it's a, bad neighborhood.
Yeah. Anything opinionated, it seems.
Yeah, anything opinionated I can't really answer. So that's also where they have to do their research. They have to know, like, where they want to move, where they would like to live. That's 100% their decision. I cannot influence it. You cannot influence it. So that's a major mistake that they make. And then like the last one they always ask about is who are the neighbors? And again, I don't know, right?
Opinionated.
Like,
Exactly.
I don't know who your neighbors are.
I don't know.
I might have spoken to them in conversations about certain things, but that's it. I don't know who your neighbors are. You're gonna have to find that out when you move in. And trust me, the neighbors ask me the same thing. Who's moving in?
Who's moving
in? Don't know.
Don't know.
So, but yeah, research is very important. You should understand where you want to live before even coming to speak to us.
Yeah.
It would make the process a lot easier.
Yes.
And smoother. I have noticed, like, hey, show us houses. And I'm like, okay. And here's like, and this is just for example, but like, here's Oceanside. And then we get to Oceanside and they start looking around while we're looking at a couple of houses, and it's like, no Oceanside. And that's like a waste of time.
It is a waste of time. You're right.
You could have already
known
decided that Oceanside is not an area I want to be in, or, wherever in Long Island.
Yeah, totally.
So, that's what I see.
So a lot of people, from what I can see, don't always understand the responsibilities that actually come with being a homeowner, particularly in like the mortgage side of things. So like the mortgage payment, a lot of people, they hear what their monthly mortgage payment is going to be and they think, okay, great, that's all I have to worry about. It's just the principal, the interest, the taxes, and the insurance. But it's not like when you rent, when like utilities are bundled in and your landlord handles the maintenance if something breaks or something goes. Renters have that luxury. Some places will include utilities, but for the most part, they don't understand that you're literally taking on the entire ownership of owning a property. So you do pay property taxes, you do pay for the insurance. If you live by the water, you do pay flood insurance. If you, you're paying utilities, you're paying your water, you're paying your gas, you're paying the electric. You have to take the responsibility for all of those things. Plus, if something winds up going, that's totally on you.
Totally.
You have to replace that.
Yes.
So those are some things that I notice that can kind of be a little bit of a shock to people. Some things could also be like a payment shock, even if they're used to paying, you know, especially for first-time home buyers, if they're living at home and then they're moving into a house, they're not used to that huge responsibility of a mortgage payment. So those are just a few things that I see.
Yeah, and I think through the excitement of purchasing a home,
Yeah.
they forget about life
Yes.
and they forget about groceries,
Yes.
gas for the car.
Right.
You know, if they have kids, you know, there's things at the school and things
Right.
that kids need, you know, so they kind of forget in the excitement of it. And so
Yeah.
they're like, okay, $5,000 a month, okay, that's cool.
Yes.
And then they realize like, oh, but then there's another, let's say, $1,500 to $2,000 because of expenses
Yes.
for everything else. So
yeah, definitely.
that's one of them. You know, and then like you mentioned, maintenance and upkeep of the home. You know, now you're, you know, especially certain neighborhoods, you have HOA
Yes.
guidelines,
Yeah.
and all types of rules. Where you got upkeep with the lawn and everything like that. So,
Oh, that's so true. Yeah.
you know, that's a responsibility whether you're paying someone to do it or do it yourself. You got to go out, get a lawnmower. X, Y,
Yeah.
and Z.
Yes, that's so true. Gardening.
And I always
all that.
recommend, like, when moving into your first home, especially, but moving into a new home in general, like, you should save at least 1% of the purchase price,
That's big.
just in case, you know, something,
Yes.
you know, to happen.
Like reserves. You have
just
something.
have something
Yes.
on the side. You never know. You know, a faucet could start leaking, you know, for whatever reason, you know, so.
Or a boiler's not as good, or something
Yeah,
you miss in an
you know,
inspection. Yeah.
Even in new construction homes, you know, there can always be an issue. Like,
Yeah.
we're not perfect. You know, these processes aren't always perfect.
Yeah.
So you should always account for those things and have money saved up just in case.
Yeah. 100%. And one thing that you just said reminds me of something else that I see a lot of mistakes, and you know, might be controversial. This can kind of go either way, but skipping a home inspection.
Yes,
That can be a big one.
very big one.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen clients skip it because maybe they got beat out in another house, and moved too slow, whatever the case is, right?
Yeah.
Another offer came in and he quickly just signed the contracts and beat my clients. And because they already did an inspection, then on the next house that we haven't accepted offer on, they decided like, well, I don't want to pay for another inspection. And I'm like, it's your choice at the end of the day. But you know, there's always something they'll come back and tell me like, oh, we found this at the house, or we missed that, and you know, we could have caught that in an inspection. You know, and inspections can save you money.
Yeah.
You know, I will agree there's times where it may be useful to waive that inspection to win a bid.
Yeah.
But, you know, I never suggest it.
Right.
And I always tell them, like, just do the inspection at the end of the day. Even new construction, right? Like, something might not be right. You never know. And it's better to, like, find it ahead of time.
Yeah.
Even if you can't get the house because of it, right?
Yeah.
It's better than 2 months later, all of a sudden you now have to pay $20,000 to get something fixed.
And that's happened. That's definitely happened.
Plenty of times.
Oh yeah, it's not the first, and it's definitely not the last. So
I think it happened a lot
yeah,
during the pandemic, unfortunately.
yeah, because bidding wars caused a lot of people to waive the inspection, waive appraisals. Then they get into the property and they realize, like, yikes, there's a lot of things
big
that
mistake.
Yeah.
So.
You know, so it's kind of like, yeah, you get the house, but at what cost, you know? So it does depend on how badly you really want it, you know? But if everybody just collectively decided not to waive inspections, you know, then they could just all get the inspections done. But unfortunately, that's not the way.
No, it's not.
It's
not. So.
Yeah, but if you could avoid it, definitely get it.
Get the inspection.
So kind of as a concluding thought, these are just some things that we see home buyers, some mistakes that we see home buyers make. You know, obviously there are plenty of other mistakes that could be made, but these are just some of the top ones that came to mind and that we see. So if you happen to have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. We'll likely do more videos like this. So if there's anything that you want to see, make sure to let us know. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again soon.